starting with, first of all, I just wanted to think about this pest in a timeline. I think we're all aware of when it started to become a problem in your various regions. I think I might have gotten the first year SWD's disrupted tart cherries wrong, maybe it was 2014 in some places, but at any rate, it has not been in North America for very long. So the amount of work that's been done on it is tremendous, but it's also, we're racing, we're trying to like get ahead of this thing that's been such a pain in the rear for everybody who grows fruit that's susceptible to it. And I just like to think about just how, I mean, if you think about all the other pests that we've dealt with, they've been here a lot longer. There's been a lot more time to like think about, like know about their biology, and we're just really just scratching the surface in some ways on this pest. But because it was first captured in California, they didn't recognize it till the next year. But at any rate, this year in 2017, I know that there were cherry growers in the west central and southwest regions that felt its impact because it was earlier. The surge and the first trap catches were about 3 weeks earlier. So I'll talk about that a little bit more. But our funding sources, just like Phil was just talking about, there have been so many partnerships, and the not just Michigan Tree Fruit Committee, but also MVG Marketing and Michigan State Horticultural Society have helped with providing match dollars for some of these other funds, and also just helping with getting preliminary data. But this is that ROAR, the Rapid Outcomes for Agricultural Research, that we're really happy we just got. In addition to the Specialty Crop Research Initiative, which is a USDA funding source, there's also projects that are being funded by the Organic Agriculture Research and Extension Initiative through the Grisham Lab. So starting with at the top, these are some of the projects that have been going on. They're either ongoing or they were just completed this past year. The researchers met on the 15th of this month and sort of summarized it in as short of a time as they could, all the work that they've been doing. And so this is what we have to present. Harit Ball is in the Grisham Lab. She was working on rearing SWD out of grape, pear, and apple fruit wastes. So like after they're pressed for juices, in other words, and SWD really loves, are able to, you can rear them out of those things very easily. Heather Leach has been working on, or just finished a project on looking at honeysuckle near blueberry. It was associated with higher pressure in the crop when there was honeysuckle nearby. Nikki Rothwell, David Jones, and Mike Haas, who's a technician in the food lab, we're working together on a multi-region trapping it from the woods into the orchard, and they were finding at least in the west central, actually in the southwest, SWD is higher in that wooded edge than in the orchards. So these are ongoing bits of, just trying to give you bits and pieces of research that's been going on. Okay, so David Jones, picture here, he did a study on processing peaches and looked at whether they were susceptible. None of the processing peaches seemed to, they were not preferred by SWD, they were not infesting them. The plums though, they're different from cherries where as soon as they start to color, they can be susceptible. Plums can be can turn color for quite a while before they become susceptible, and it's all based on the softness of the fruit. So he was able to show that if you pick the plums early, you can avoid infestation. And then Nikki was working on a comparison, a choice and no choice test for whether SWD will infest tart cherries. They're just starting to color. Given a choice though, they'll select sweet cherries or other berries over the tart cherries. Yellow processing cherries are not preferred, so I'm looking at these different, we're trying to learn about the biology of this pest and what it prefers. Harit Ball, again, from the Grisham Lab, is part of that OREI project with Michigan, Florida, and Georgia. They were looking at different surrounding landscapes and seeing if any of those were associated with higher levels of SWD abundance and for overwintering in particular. So they were trapping in these overwintering areas, and they found that pine groves seemed to have the highest number of SWD coming out of them, which is for overwintering, which is an interesting new finding. Bill Fanning, who's going to be speaking a little bit later, was working on a microclimate manipulation study in raspberry high tunnels. They found no effective infestation as a result of increased pruning. But in blueberries, where they pruned more than the grower standard, that lowered the humidity, they presume, and also the use of black weed fabric. Both of those things seem to reduce infestation in the blueberries. Nikki's going to talk about the tart cherry work that was very similar a little later. Keith Mason in the Isaacs lab was looking at SWD infestation in grapes and how that might interact with other Drosophila. So it looks like grapes have higher infestation by other fruit flies, Drosophila, if they're infested by SWD first, but the fruit rots did not increase. In blueberry, the control of SWD has disrupted a biological control agent that used to control gall wasps. So gall wasps are now a huge problem for a lot of growers, especially in Southwest Michigan, because because we have to manage for SWD. So an old pest has become a really important pest where it wasn't before. Heather Leach, she will also speak on about another project a little later, but she just completed a 2-year study to collect and identify parasitoids that are already attacking SWD. So this is to provide a baseline of information on like what species are out there because we're expecting that in the future there will be other parasitoid species that are proposed for introduction as a biocontrol. Joanne Huang, who works in the Goot Lab, has been looking at yeast strains. So we know SWD are used yeasts as a really important food source. And so if we can find a yeast strain that's really attractive, it might be useful in a variety of ways. So it might be useful as a lure in a trap or a lure in an attract and kill technology. She's also looking at pouch style attract and kill. So work in the lab, in bioassays in the lab has shown success, but so far they're having a hard time translating it to the field, but they're going to be continuing with this work. There's some product, Splat, some of you might be familiar with this product already, that appears to work in blueberry, perhaps, as an attract and kill, but that's pretty early work being done. Kerdong is in the Department of Entomology. You probably are familiar with her. She doesn't normally work in tree fruit, but she works with Drosophila quite a lot in resistance management or resistance testing. And she's been evaluating a number of essential oils or their components in these really tiny arenas to see if they're repellent to Drosophila. And they're going to scale that up to a small wind tunnel in cooperation with the Goot Lab to see if some of those behaviors hold. So then I'm going to talk about what I've been focused on mainly this last season, which, past few seasons, is the SWD tracking network. And it's not a one-person show. It takes an army to check all these traps and submit all the data. And this is not even everyone who is checking traps. There were a bunch of underlings that also helped with checking the traps. So people who worked for these people, but I just wanted to point out Chris is in the Goot Lab, Harit is in the Grisham Lab, Brad and Carlos and David and Bob Tritton are extension educators, and we've got technicians and students, and everybody is working together to try to get the data out there. So what it looked like, this is where we were able to cover. So the green counties are what we were considering the northern counties, the blue were what we were calling the central counties, and the yellow are what we were calling the southern counties. We had 175 sites, and this is 20 counties, about eight different crops. And most of them were trapping with the deli cup traps, but we were also, the Goot Lab has been working with, Danielle actually, Kirkpatrick has been working on this other kind of a trap that's a red panel trap that might be, so anyway, two different types of traps, Sentry lures were used, and they were put out we monitored for 11 weeks, or reported about for 11 weeks. Mid-May to end of July, there were 7 reports. So this is what it looked like, and this is actually what I wanted to do was show the last 3 years. So 2015 is the pale line, 2016 is that in-between line, and then the top line is 2017. And you'll see that in the northern, central, and southern counties, the first catch, which is this arrow, was earlier, has been earlier every year, but was quite a bit earlier this year for each of the regions. And so that was our first sustained catch, 3 weeks earlier than last year. The summer population surge was also about 4 weeks earlier than last year in the southern and central regions. And that, is the reason why people were affected by it. If you're growing cherries in those areas this year, and you may not have been affected last year. So we're not sure what next season will hold, but we're going to continue this work, even though it is a tremendous amount of work to collect all this data, just so that we can know whether it's going to be an early season or what can we expect. I mean, if it's going earlier every year, that's part of that is because the population just continues to build over time. But there has to be some kind of we would expect there'd be some kind of a breaking point where it would start to level out. So the talks that you're going to hear today after me that also have been funded under a lot of these different resources. Larry Good's going to talk about improving and understanding trapping. This is that red panel trap I was just talking about. Phil Fanning from the Isaacs Lab is going to be talking about screening for insecticide resistance. John Wise is going to talk about his work on rain fastness of the insecticides that we're using. Nikki Rothwell is going to talk about efficacy trials and orchard modification work. Heather Leach is going to talk about winter morphs. And Emily Pochebay is going to be talking about evaluating spray programs.